The next program in chapter 4 is budget analysis. Okay. All right, so write a program that asks the user to enter the amount that he or she has budgeted for a month. A loop should then prompt the user to enter each of his or her expenses for the month and keep a running total. So when the loop finishes, the program should display the amount that the user is over and under budget. Okay, so basically the program is going to ask the user to enter the budget for a month. So let's say the user is going to enter, let's say, $5,000 for this month. I plan to use $5,000 for this month. Then a loop is going to ask the user continuously, enter the first expense. Okay, so maybe I bought a phone for $200, and it's going to ask you again, do you have more expenses? And the user is going to type something, maybe Y for yes, and the user is going to keep on typing in expenses. As long as the user has more expenses, the user is going to continue typing more expenses. And when the user is done, the user is going to end the program, and the program is going to basically say that, oh, you were under budget or you were over budget by this amount. The program is going to say, oh, you didn't use all your budgets, so in that case you were under it, or maybe you used everything, and it was exact, or you used over your budget, so you were over budget. Okay. So I'm going to start the program, and it will make more sense as we do it. So I'll go ahead and create the class, and I'll call it budget analysis. And then I'll create the main method. Oops. Okay, so see the program over here says write a program that asks the user to enter the amount that he or she has budgeted for a month. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Let's go ahead and ask the user for how much he or she has budgeted for a month. So since we're going to be using, okay, I always forget to turn my mail off because it can be a distraction. Sorry about that. Okay, so since we are going to be accepting input from the user, we should use one of Java's features for accepting input, for accepting user input. So we have the option between the scanner and then the G option pane. For this one, I'm going to be using the scanner. I'm just choosing to use the scanner. I can go ahead and use the G option pane, but I'm just choosing to use the scanner. Okay, so in order to use the scanner, we need to import it. So import the scanner class, so that this program can have access to it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with the import statement java.util.scanner. And once we've created the scanner, we need to once we've imported the scanner class, we need to create a scanner object so that we can use that to accept input from the user. So I'm going to go ahead and create a scanner object. I'll call it scanner. I'm creating a new scanner object in memory, and I'm passing in the system.in method, which is basically going to take byte info from the keyboard, connect it to the scanner object, and then we can go ahead and use the methods in the scanner class to go ahead and convert what the user has typed to whatever we want, either doubles or integers or strings. It's already accepted as a string, so strings or other types that we want. So we can now go ahead and ask the user to enter the amount that he or she has budgeted. So I'm going to call a system.out.println statement and say, please enter the amount that you have budgeted for a month, for the month. So the user now is going to see this question. I'm going to go ahead and use a scanner object that I created. I'm going to call the next double, the next double method, which is going to it's going to pop up a text box and allow the user to type in something. And once the user does that, this next double method, the scanner.next double method, is going to take whatever the user has typed, convert it to a double, and return it. So once it returns it, we need a variable to store it in. So I'm going to go ahead and create a double variable. Double because it's going to be a dollar amount. It's going to be maybe $500.25. So 500.25 or something like that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create a double variable. I'm going to call it user budget. That's going to be the budget that the user has, or is going to set. So user budget is going to store the budget for the month. So user budget is going to store over here what the budgets that the user has typed. So that's going to be stored in user budget. So by this point we have user budget. All right, so over here it says a loop should then prompt the user to enter each of his or her expenses for the month, okay, and keep a running total. All right, so before that I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to call it more expenses. And more expenses is going to be, it's a char variable, okay, char variable, and I'm going to call it more expenses. More expenses is going to hold initially the value y. So I'm setting this to y because I'm going to use this variable to be asking the user, okay, if the user has more expenses, and if the user sets this value to anything other than y, okay, y for yes, anything other than y, then the loop is going to stop asking the user for expenses. So I'm setting it to y for yes, meaning the loop is going to continue asking the user until y is not until more expenses is not y. But I'll do it and then you'll have an idea. So now we have user budget here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a while loop here this way. And in a while loop I'm going to say while more expenses, okay, is equal to, okay, I'm using double equals for comparison. If I used one equal, I'll be assigning. So but because I'm using double equals, I'm just comparing what's on the right to what's on the left. So I'm saying whilst more expenses is yes, or is y for yes, okay. So while more expenses is y, then let's go ahead and ask the user. I'm very sorry for the cough, okay. Whilst more expenses is y, meaning whilst there are more expenses, then let's ask the user to enter an expense, or enter an expense. Enter an expense here will work. And then we're going to use the same idea here to accept the expense, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste it. But so again, scanner.next double is going to pop up some kind of text box and allow the user to enter the expense for the month. Okay, it's a double because it's a dollar amount. So user can say I spent $26.50, so 26.50 for something this month. And once that happens, I need a place to store it. So I'm going to go ahead and create another variable, and I'm going to call it, it's a double, I'm going to call it monthly, not monthly expense. I'm going to say expense. I'm just going to call it, let's see, user expense. User expense. User expense is going to hold each expense at a time. So user expense is going to hold the expense that the user types each time this loop runs. Okay. So we'll have while more expenses is equal to yes, then enter an expense. We're going to store the expense here in user expense. But the thing is, we want to keep track of the total expenses for the month. So we're going to keep, because the question says we should keep a running total. Okay, the loop should then prompt the user to enter each of his or her expenses for the month, and keep a running total. So first of all, I'm going to create a variable of a double, and I'm going to call it total expenses. And total expenses is going to hold all the expenses added together, all the user expenses added together, each expense just added to the total expenses. initially, when the user doesn't have any expense, it's 0. Initially, before the program starts, it's 0. So I'm going to initialize it to 0. And once we receive one expense here in user expense, let's go ahead and add it to total expenses. So total expenses is going to be equal to total expenses plus user expense. Okay, so what is happening is initially when the program runs, total expenses is 0. So we are taking 0, okay, plus the expense that the user has typed. If it's $5, we are adding 5 to 0, and then total expenses now is going to be 5. The loop is going to go around again. It's going to ask the user for the user expense, the next user expense, and the user is going to go ahead and type, let's say, $2. So now, because total expenses was $5, it's going to be $5 over here plus $2, and then the result is going to be $7. Now total expenses is going to be $7. So it's going to basically accumulate into the total expenses variable. All right, so once we've done that, once we've accepted the expense from the user and we've added up, we've added it up to total expenses. Before the loop goes back up again, let's go ahead and ask if the user has more expenses. So it's a question. Okay, it's a question saying, do you have more expenses? Do you have more expenses? Okay, so I'm going to even type here and say, please enter Y for yes, or any character for no. Okay, or we can just say, actually any character will work, because any character other than Y will work. But I'm just going to say N, Y for yes, N for no. Okay, so once we ask this question, do you have more expenses, we need to ask pop up some kind of text box for the user to type in a response. So in this case, I'm going to use the scanner object that I created up here. I'm going to use it this way. So scanner.nextLine. Okay. Before I go ahead to so scanner.nextLine is it's just like scanner.nextDouble, and scanner.nextLine it's going to basically also pop up some kind of text box, allow the user to type in something, but it's going to return it as a string. But this scanner.nextDouble was returning it as a double, but this one is returning whatever the user types as a string. Okay, so if the user types in N, okay, it's going to be returned as a string. But if we try to store it in more expenses this way, more expenses is a char variable. It's a character variable, and remember I said a next line is returned as a string. That's not that won't work. If the interpreter will complain and say that, look, you are trying to store a character in a string, so that won't work. I mean, in any case, a character more expenses is a character variable. It holds only one value, but because it's a string, next line accept a string, the user can go ahead and type in no, or you can type in no. No is more than one character, and more expenses has to hold one character, and it has to be a character, not even a string. So the way we are going to do this is we're going to add char at, okay, char at 0, and let me explain this. So basically so in any string, so let's say no, each character in any string has an index. Okay, it starts from the first character, which has an index of 0, and the second character has an index of 1, and so on. So if we have a string like, let's say, apple, the first character A has an index of 0. Index always starts from 0. Index of 0. The first P has an index of 1. Second P has an index of 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The first character has an index of 0. So what we are saying with scanner.nextLine.char means, okay, go ahead and accept the string. Okay, with scanner.next line. But when you accept the string, before you return it, fetch, okay, or get the character at index 0, okay? Meaning, in this string that the user has typed, fetch the character at position 0. And remember, position 0 is the first character like this. So if the user types in no, like this, it's going to, although it's a string, it's going to fetch the character at position 0, which is n. N has a position index of 0, okay, index of 0. And I'm interchanging position. I'm actually interchanging position and index. I mean the same thing, but actually position is actually the position that the character in. I'm referring to index. Okay, when I say when I said position, I meant index. So let me just stick with one, index. Well, position is not necessarily the same as index. It depends on how you think about it. But I'm just going to use index. Index is the right word. So fetch the character at index 0. So in this case, n has an index of 0, 0 has an index of 1, and so on. So when the user types in no as a string, fetch the character at position 0, which is n, and store that character in more expenses. Now, 1, you're storing only one character, and 2, it's a character. It's not a string anymore. So get the string and then fetch the character at position index 0, not position, index 0, and then store it in more expenses. So if the user types in no, it's going to fetch n and store n in more expenses. And the loop is going to come back and say, while more expenses is equal to y. If more expenses has been set to n, more expenses is not equal to y. So this loop is going to exit and continue down. If the user types in yes, like this, it's going to fetch the character at index 0, which is y, and more expenses is going to be y. So while more expenses is equal to y, which it will be, it's going to go in the loop and continue doing what the loop is saying. Ask the user again to type in yes or no if they have, y or n if they have more expenses, and it's going to work like that. So that's what we're going to do. All right. So once this loop is done, we're going to have the total expenses here stored here, and we're going to have the user budgets also stored here. So we're going to over down here, because we have the total expenses and the user the total expenses and the user budgets, we can go ahead and create an if statement and do some comparison and say, you're going to say if the let's start with when the user budget is greater than let's start with when the total expenses is less than the user budget. Okay, let's start with when the expenses of the user, the total expenses of the user is less than the user budget. Okay, that means the user was under budget. So if the user expenses, no, not user expenses, total expenses here, total expenses. So if total expenses was in this case is less than monthly budget. If total expenses is less than monthly budget, then that means that you are under budget, right? But let's even go a step further and calculate how much you are under budget, right? So let's go ahead and type a print statement and say you were under, oops, my typing is not good. You were under budget. Okay, now let's calculate. I'm going to concatenate it with a variable, okay, but I'm going to do some evaluation, some math here. So if the total expenses was less than a monthly budget, right? If you subtract the total expenses from the monthly budget, you have how much is left. So we can go ahead and display that. So let's say you were under budget, monthly budget, okay, monthly budget minus total expenses, and then whatever is left is what they didn't use, is what they're left with. Okay, so let's say you were on the budget, all right, and where is it? This amount, okay, this amount. But first let's just go ahead and display the raw figure. Later on we can format it. So you're on the budget this amount. All right. So if the total expenses, sorry, over here I put an FI. Okay, sorry. if the total expenses was not less than the monthly budget, or is not less than the monthly budget, okay, let's go ahead and call an else if condition and create the block. Okay, so if the total expenses are not less than the monthly budget, then it's either the total expenses is equal to monthly budget, or the total expenses is greater than the monthly budget, right? So let's continue with if the total expenses is greater than the monthly budget. So if the total expenses is greater than the monthly budget, that means that they use more than the monthly budget. So in that case, they were over budget, right? So let's copy the same statement here and paste it. Oops. Okay. In that case, then you were over budget, but then the calculation is going to be different. If they were over budget, okay, if the total expenses were over the monthly budget, sorry, not greater than over here. Sorry, if the total expenses was greater than a monthly budget, then that means you were over budget, right? So in order to calculate the how much they were over budget, we have to subtract the monthly budget from the total expenses. Okay, so now it's going to be the other way around. Total expenses, because it's more than monthly budget, we're going to subtract the monthly budget from it. So it's going to be total expenses minus the monthly budget, like this. And it's going to tell the user how much they were over budget. Now else means that the total expenses weren't or wasn't less than monthly budget, and at the same time it wasn't greater than monthly budget. It means that it was equal to, it means the total expenses was equal to the monthly budget. So in that case, then we can tell the user something different and say that we can say that we can change it completely and say we can say your total expenses of we have the variable in the values in the variable, so we can go ahead and use it. Your total expenses of, we have the variable total expenses, okay, your total expenses of total expenses. Actually, we'll later format it. I'll change how it looks, and then we'll format it. Okay. Your total expenses of total expenses. Let's see. No. Let me change the string and say. I don't know. Let's just type in something very simple. I can say that we can say you used up exactly your, I don't know. Let's just type a straight simple statement. You used up exactly your monthly budget. Exactly your monthly budget. Something you can put in the variables that however you want. I just wanted to make it look nice. Okay, so you use exactly your monthly budget. All right, it's fine. That's fine. So if we do this, we're fine. We're going to encounter some problems, but I will wait till we get there. Because of how the scanner works, but I'll explain once we get there. Okay, so let me go ahead and compile this and then see what happens. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it budget analysis, and I'll create it and I'll save it here. Okay, so let's see what's happening. Cannot find symbol monthly budget. How did I spell it? Monthly budget over here. Okay, I didn't. It's user budget, not monthly budget. Sorry, I don't even know why I typed in a monthly budget. User budget. Okay, and over here I do the same thing. So user budget, and over here too. Use the budget and this one too. So I'm going to compile it, and we're done. But like I said, it should give us some problems. Okay, so let me run it first and see what happens. Please enter the amount that you have budgeted for the month. I'm going to enter $100. I've budgeted $100 for the month. Enter an expense. I'm going to say $10 and hit enter. Oops. Okay, so this is the problem. Do you have more expenses? Please enter Y for yes, no for okay. So that's the problem I was talking about. Okay, so let's go through it and see why it gave us this error. All right, so it has something to do with how this kind of works, by the way. So let's see. We first call this Canada.next double over here, and before that, let me go ahead and type in something here and explain to you what. All right, so there's something called a keyboard buffer, okay, and it's like I'll just go ahead and do this for now. Okay, so think of the keyboard buffer as some kind of space, okay, some kind of space on the computer. Let's say some kind of memory space or something. All right, so anytime you use this Canada.next double, it goes ahead and for example, if the user types in 12.2, okay, it's going to also leave behind, okay, a line break over here. It's going to leave behind a line break. Anytime you use, I'll explain it. Hold on a second. So anytime you use it, and this is only with numbers, okay. Anytime you use something that has to do with numbers, like let's say it's Canada.next double or it's Canada.next int, it's going to store what the user typed, okay, in the keyboard buffer. At the same time, it's going to leave behind a line break, okay. So, but the thing is, next doubles and next int, okay, are designed to skip over the line breaks when they are reading stuff from the keyboard buffer. And again, you'll understand this as I'm explaining. Next lines are not designed to skip over a new line character. When they encounter a new line character, they just stop, or they just stop working, or they skip over it. They just stop working, basically. So, assuming over here, when we go here, the user typed in 12.2. It's going to store 12.2 in the keyboard buffer, and then it's going to leave behind. You can say a new line character. You can say line break, which is, let's say, a new line character. So I'm going to type this, okay, and then it's going to read 12.2 into user expense. Okay, so that's gone. So now there's a line break. That's the next thing to read in the keyboard buffer. So the next thing we use again was next line here. Okay, and the next line over here. Let's see. Actually, we use next double twice. I'm sorry. Okay, so let's start over here. Let's start again. The first time we used this kind of was a next double. Okay, next double was, let's say the user typed in 12.2, or let's say 12.2. Let's say 120.2. Okay, 1.2 for the user budget. It's going to store the 120.2 in the keyboard buffer and an extra line break. So it's going to go ahead and read the 120.2 into the user budget. So that's gone. The next thing to be read is in the keyboard buffer is the new line character. Like I said, next doubles are designed to skip over line breaks. They're designed to skip over it. So then over here we use again a next double. Okay, so it saw the next double saw this line break and then skipped over it. Okay, so it's going to store what the user types. Let's say if the user typed in 15.2, it's going to store it in the keyboard buffer, and then it's going to see another. It's going to leave behind another line break because, like I said, next doubles, next ends, anything to do with numbers, leave behind an extra line break. So because next doubles are designed to skip over line breaks, when it saw this new line, it skipped over it. Okay, here. So now it's reading from here. So it's going to take this 15.2 and store it in user expense. So that's gone. And then we are here. We are here now. Okay, this is what we have. Where the cursor is. And then the next time we use the scanner was the next line. Remember I said next lines are not designed to skip over line breaks. Remember, we are here now. Next lines are not designed to skip over line breaks. So when they encountered this new line character, they froze. They froze because guess what? You are telling the next line method to fetch the character at position nothing. Think about it. We have not. If the user types in yes, the index of y is 0. So the user can the next line, the char at 0 can fetch y, but you have nothing, and you're telling next line to fetch the character at position of. We have nothing in the first place. So at what position? So it's going to come here and saying string index out of range because of course it's out of range because one, it doesn't even have an index and you're fetching the index. You're out of the range of the string. There's no string to even have there's no range basically. So it's going to complain, right? And I hope you understood this keyboard buffer thing. So anytime you use a scanner.next double or scanner.next int, it first stores what the user types plus an extra line breaks. Next doubles and next ends are designed to skip over line breaks and continue reading from the keyboard buffer. But the next line, anytime you use it, is not designed to skip over line breaks. So anytime they encounter it, they freeze or they stop. Okay. They try to they take in the nothing. Okay, and then they stop. Okay, so you can think of it that way too. They taking whatever is here and then they stop. They freeze. All right, so the way to fix it is this. Now this next line is encountering nothing, and it's trying to fetch the character at position of nothing. So the way to fix it is we need to manually clear off, because the cursor is here. We need to manually clear off this new line character, okay? And then, so that the scanner can have a freeway, because if anytime they encounter like a new line character, like I said, they freeze, okay? They stop from there. You can think of it as they take in this new line character and then they stop. They've taken in something and they stop. Actually, this something is basically nothing. It's like an empty line pretty much. So that's what happens. So there's a way to fix this. The only way we can clear this new line character. I mean, the only way we can fix it is we have to clear this new line character so that the scanner.next line can move on freely without encountering any line break. And the way you do that is by just calling over here. After you've used, let's see, and I hope this works. Let's see. After we've called it the next double, it's stored in something over here. Let's say 12.2, and it's left behind an extra line break. We need to clear this off so that when the next line method starts reading from the keyboard buffer, it doesn't read in a line break, or reading a new line, okay. And the way you do that is you just remember scanner.next line takes in what the user has typed. Okay, it's going to first pop up a text box and allow the user to type in something. But if the user hasn't typed in anything, it's going to take in that empty, or basically what the user has typed. Okay. Think about it this way. When the scanner.next line method is called, it's going to pop up a text box and allow the user to type in something, and it's going to return whatever the user has typed as a string. But in this case, in the keyboard buffer, it encountered a new line. So you can think of it this way: that the scanner.next line takes in it takes in, for example, if the first thing it encounters is a new line character, it takes in a new line character and then freezes, right? So I'm going to go, like I said, I'm saying this because I'm trying to explain how to fix it. The way to fix it is when you have to you can basically call scanner, okay, dot next line again over here. But this time around, we are not storing it anywhere. So this kind of the next line is basically going to consume this extra line break. It's basically, you can think of it think of it this way. It's going to take, because it's the first thing that it encountered, it's going to take in this new line character or this line break, and then it's going to try to return it. But as long as we don't store it in a variable, let's say we have a variable new line, as a string or something. As long as we don't store it anywhere. We just consume it. You can think of it as you just take away this new line character and don't do anything with it. Just consume it. When you do that, you've cleared the way for. And I don't have to put it here. Okay, I have to put it up here actually. So when you do that, you've cleared the way for this method here, this kind.nextLine. You've called it this kind.nextLine, so it's going to go ahead. There was a new line character here, so it's going to go ahead and clear it off. Okay, it's going to consume that new line character, but it's not going to store it in any variable. It's just going to consume it. And when you do that, you've cleared the way, okay, for this next line. So when this next line is called, the user is going to type in something, let's say y, okay, or yes. It's going to take the character at position of yes, okay, and it's going to return it in more expenses. Okay, but initially there was nothing. I was trying to find the index of nothing, okay, which is, you can think of it as a new line, an empty line, because that was the first thing it encountered. That was the first thing it encountered before anything else. So it was trying to get the position of nothing. So when you call the scanner.nextLine, the reason why it didn't work, the reason why it froze, because it saw nothing. It was trying to get the position of nothing, and it couldn't find it. So when you call this kind.next, and I'll put the semicolon here. When you call this kind.nextLine, it's trying to take in. It basically takes in this, okay. It takes in this new line character, okay, and that's it. Because we are just calling it and not storing it anywhere. It just consumes it and does nothing with it. It's you can think of it as it's returning it, but then there's nothing to store it in. So we are not using it basically. But the first one stopped because, like I said, it saw the new line character, it took it in, tried to find the character at position 0 of nothing, and that's why. I hope you understand this. Maybe I'm explaining it a bit rough, but I hope I gave you an idea of what's happening. So when you do this, you're clearing the road for this next line method to be able to operate normally. So every time you use a next double or a next int and about to use a next line after that, you need to basically clear off or consume that extra line break that is left behind by the next doubles or the next int. Anything that has to do with numbers leaves behind it a new line character, and you have to clear it before using the next line. Otherwise, the next line is going to see that new line character or that line break, consume that, and then stop there. Okay. I hope I was able to at least explain this a little bit. So let's try this and see if it really fixed it. So I'm going to compile this and run it. Please enter the amount that you've budgeted for the month. I'm going to type in 100. Enter an expense. I'm going to type in 10 and hit enter. See, now it worked. Now it worked because I was able to clear off that new line character. So I cleared the way for this next line to be able to read in whatever the user typed in here into the keyboard buffer. Okay, so do you have more expenses? I'm going to type in Y for yes and hit enter. And it says enter an expense. I'm going to enter 10. So far, if I hit enter, I've used $20 out of my $100. I'm going to hit enter. Do you have another expense? I'm going to hit no. So I'm expecting to be under budget $80 because I only used $20 out of my $100. So I'm going to hit enter, and it says you are under budget 80, and it's correct. Okay, we'll format this later on, but let me try the other way around. Enter a budget. I'm going to enter 100. Enter an expense. I'm going to first type in 90 for the one expense. That means I've used $90 so far, and I'm going to use 20 for the next one. That means I'm going to be over my budget $10 because I used 90, I used 20. When you add them up, it's 110. 110, I was over the $100, $10. I'm going to hit enter, and well, it's going to ask me, do you have more expenses? Sorry. Do you have more expenses? I have to hit yes before it asks me another expense. So I'm going to hit 20. Yes. So when I hit enter, total I have so far used 110. But it's going to ask me, do I have another expense? I'm going to enter N for no, and I'm expecting to be over budget $10, and it says you were over budget 10. But like I said, we'll format this to a dollar value right now. Okay, so I hope you understood the idea behind this keyboard buffer thing. But I'm sure we'll write programs that we encounter this a couple of times. So it actually happened in previous programs in chapter 2 or chapter 3. I think chapter 2. It happened, and I explained it a couple of times, like 2 or 3 times. Yeah, maybe 2 times. And maybe this is the third or second, I'm not sure. Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and format the values here. I was supposed to actually use system.out.printf instead of println, but I don't know why I use println. So let's go ahead and format it. Okay, let's print it formatted. So printf, I'm going to change it to printf. Let's start with the first one. You are on the budget. Okay, so I'm going to replace this calculation here. Okay, so first of all, I'm not going to concatenate. I'm going to put a comma here. This is the string I'm going to specify a format in the string, and I'm going to say what is going to replace that placeholder. So you're on the budget. I'm going to say %f for float. Okay, I want it formatted as a float, so I'm going to say %f. I want it formatted to 2 decimal places, so I'm going to say 0.2. If I wanted to format it to 3 decimal places, I would say 0.3. But I want it formatted to 2 decimal places, I'll say 0.2. And you put it in between the percentage and the f, okay? So that's the precision. And I'm going to put a comma right in front of the precision. Before the precision, okay, I'll put a comma. And it's going to automatically put commas in the value. So if I have 2 million, it's going to say 2,000,000,000. It's going to know where to put the commas automatically to form the string, or to form the dollar amount. And I'm also going to go ahead and put a $ in front of it. So like this. I hope that works. Yeah, I hope that works. Okay, yeah, I'm going to put the $ in front of it like that. And what is going to replace this placeholder, okay, formatted, is the result of this. Okay, so that's why I put a comma. I'm going to do the same thing for this over here. I wanted formatted the same thing, so I'm going to copy this. And you were over budget. I'm going to put the format, specify over there, put a comma, and this is going to replace this here. And then use exactly your monthly budget as I can even say with an expense off. I can use this. Put the comma after this, and use total expenses. Okay, so it's going to total expenses is going to do this. Okay, or with the total expense, total expenses is going to replace this placeholder. So with total expense, or with total expenses, yeah, of dollars. Okay. All right, so let's compile it and see if it works. Oops, let's see. Cannot find symbol method println. Oh, this is supposed to be a printf. Printf takes this kind of formatting, or basically this kind of 2 arguments, a couple of arguments. All right, so I need to change it to printf like I did for this one. So I compile it and it works. Let me go ahead and run it and see if it changed, or if it looks like a dollar amount, which it should. So please enter. I'm going to enter $100. First, I'm going to enter $10. Do you have more expenses? Yes. For Y for yes. Another 10. Y for yes. Another 10. So I've used $30 so far. I'm expecting to be under budget $70. I'm going to hit N for no, and it says you were under budget $70, and you can see it's formatted very nicely. Let's try the other way around, and after that we'll try the equal to, and then we're done. So enter the amounts. I'm going to enter $100. No, actually, let me enter $200. And oops, yeah, $200. That's fine. Please enter an expense. I'm going to enter $100. That's my first expense. I have another expense, another $100. I have another expense, another $100. So I've used $300 so far. So I'm expecting to be over budget $100. Actually, let me go ahead and add one more expense to say $10. So I've used $310 so far. So I'm over budget $110. I'm expecting to see that. I'm going to hit N. Now it says you're over budget $110. So let's try the other, the equal to case, if I use exactly what I budgeted. So I'm going to type in $50. In the first month, the first expense, I bought $10 worth of stuff. I bought another thing with $10. I bought Yes. Another thing worth $20. I have another expense, and I bought another thing worth $10. So I have 10, which is 20, plus another 20, which is 40, plus another 10, which is 50. So I use exactly $50. I'm going to hit I have no more expenses, and hit enter, and it says use exactly your monthly budget with total expenses of $50. So this program works. It's formatting it nicely over here. I hope you understood the keyboard buffer explanation. Anytime you use next doubles and next ends, anything that has to do with numbers, it leaves behind an extra line break. Next lines are not designed to skip over line breaks, but when next doubles or next end see line breaks, they're fine with it. They can skip over it and continue reading from the keyboard buffer. That's why when this next double was called and it left behind a line break, this next double encountered that line break and then skipped over it. But this next double also left behind another line break. But next lines are not designed to skip over line breaks. So next line took in that line break and stopped. And then it was trying to find the character at position 0 of that empty line, which had nothing in it. So it complained. So in order for this to really work, we have to get rid of that line break that this next double left behind. So we cleared it, and then now there was nothing in front of this this next line method to encounter. It's only what the user typed, okay, and what the user typed was it fetched the character at position 0. Index 0 of that string. Okay, it fetched the character at index 0 of that string and then stored it in here, more expenses, and the loop worked in the manner in which it's supposed to work, and we got our values this way. All right, so like I said, I hope it was a bit rough, but I hope you understood the idea of the keyboard buffer. If you have any questions, please comment down below, and I'll do everything to respond to them. Thank you very much for watching, and take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time with the next program. All right, bye-bye.